Hello, mathematicians. Today we are going to learn about addition and multiplication properties. Thanks you guys for watching. Okay, make sure you've got your math journal and your pencil so you can take any notes, jot any questions you've got, and then remember there's going to be the responses you're going to record here at the end as well. Okay, first property we're going to talk about is the addition property, or addition properties. The first one, if you want to find the sum of 17 and 3, you can just change the order of the addends. When you change the order of those addends, you're still going to get the same sum, and we call that the commutative property. Everybody say commutative with me? Commutative. All right, next property. According to the order of operations, when you encounter parentheses in math problems, you solve the portion in parentheses first. So when I look at this following problem, I notice that the only operation that's required is addition. So I'm going to look for patterns or relationships that make sense to me. So when I look for patterns that I'm more familiar with or landmarks, you're going to have less likelihood of errors, and then you're going to be able to check for reasonableness as well. So when I look at this, I know 16 and 4, that's a 10. So I'm going to regroup this, and I'm going to add 16 and 4 before the 4 and a 7, and I'm still going to have the same sum of 27. And that's the associative property. That's changing the grouping. Okay, the next one, this is one of my favorites. Any number plus 0 is equal to that number. So whether that number is 1 plus 0, it's still going to be that number, 1, or it's 20,000 plus 0, it's going to be 20,000. And that's the identity property. The number's going to stay itself. And remember, these are just addition properties we're talking about now. Now we're going to be moving into the multiplication properties. Again, we're going to have the same three properties, but there's going to be a little bit of variance. We're going to start by talking about the commutative property relating to multiplication. If I want to find the product of 10 and 3, I can still change the order of the factors. 3 times 10 is still going to be 30. And that's the commutative property of multiplication again. Okay, same thing. According to the order of operations, when you encounter parentheses in a math problem, you have to solve the portion in parentheses first. When I look at the following problem, I see that the only operation that's required is multiplication. So I'm going to look for a pattern or a relationship. You know I love those 10s, so I'm going to go and I'm going to, instead of doing the 10 times 2 first, I'm going to do 2 times 5. So then I've got 10 times 10, which is still going to give me the same product of 100. And again, that's the associative property where we're changing the grouping of our factors in multiplication. The identity property says, again, this is my favorite, any number times 1 is that number. So 100 times 1 is 100. It's the number that you started with. 20,000, that should be times 1, is 20,000. So an identity property, the number stays itself. Okay, this one is an awesome strategy too. 15 times 3, if I'm finding the product of 15 times 3, what I can do is break apart or distribute one of my factors. I can take 15 and distribute it into 10 and 5. 10 plus 5 is going to give me 15. Now, I still have to multiply because I've got another factor that I have to multiply by. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 10 times 3 and add it to 5 times 3. So I've got 10 times 3 is 30, plus 5 times 3, which is 15, and that's equal to 45. And I intentionally picked this number 2 because, again, this is one that you should recognize as a landmark because of thinking of time intervals. We know that 3 15s is going to be 45. And that's the distributive property. You break it apart, but then you also put it back together to find that final product. All right, this is awesome too. You don't just have to add for the distributive property. Looking at 99, it's really close to 100. So what I'm going to do in this case is take 100 minus 1. I'm still going to multiply by 5, but I'm finding that I'm only going to be 1 5 less than 100. So I'm going to do 100 minus 1, which is still equal to 99. So again, I'm going to have my 100 times 5, And I'm going to have my 1 times 5 here. 100 times 5 is 500. Then I've got to still subtract 1 5. So 500 minus 5 is 495. And that's the distributive property. Break it apart, put it back together. Okay, just to recap, commutative property changes the order, whether it be multiplication or addition. The associative property changes the grouping, again, whether that be multiplication or addition. In the identity property, the number remains itself. With addition, any number plus 0 is that number. With multiplication, any number times 1, it's still that number. And then the distributive property, you break it, that's for the multiplication, you break a factor apart, multiply it by the other factor, then bring it back together and add those two separate factors. Sorry, two separate products from the factor you broke, distributed. Okay, so here's your questions to answer in your journal. Where and when did you watch? And then I'd like you to solve the following using one of the properties we just discussed, and make sure you name the property. So we've got an addition problem here. So remember, solve it and then tell me the property. And again, a multiplication problem. Same thing, you're going to solve it and tell me the property you used. Here's your bonus question. Come up with a mnemonic device or a creative way to remember the addition and multiplication properties. This one you can be as creative as you want. Be a song, a dance. Surprise me. I can't wait to see what you've got tomorrow. Thank you. Thanks for watching.